Hello once again, this is Uncle Jimmy with Jimmy's Train Station and Travel Adventures, and I'm here in Gettysburg. Boy, it's a beautiful day. 70 degrees out. Here it is, end of January or February, almost going into March, and it's 70 degrees. Where's winter? I'm glad it's this way. I'm not complaining. I have the appropriate t-shirt on today. I got my Abraham Lincoln shirt. It's kind of funny. It says I'm not a fan of theater, which is kind of funny because, you know, he's assassinated in a theater. I like these funny shirts like this. But I'm continuing my story of ghost stories in Gettysburg. This last video I did last week was such a hit that I figured I'd tell you a little more ghost stories. So we're gonna make this Ghost Stories of Gettysburg Part 2. Now in this, a lot of these stories come from, like I said, Mark Nesbitt's book, Ghost of Gettysburg, and I like to give credit where credit's due. But also some of these will be my own personal experiences today. So follow me on this adventure as we do Ghost of Gettysburg Stories Part 2. So here we stand with the first story I'm going to tell you at the base of Little Round Top. Little Round Top's off in the distance there. And during the first day's battle, it was most likely the Alabamians who came across here up there by the Rose Farm up there and crossed this field going to Little Round Top first or second day. And most likely it was the first day in the evening. And the story goes that there was a farmhouse here that was then a barn with a dirt floor. I believe this house here, right as you turn to go on Little Round Top, is the house they're talking about, because all the other farms was here except this one. So I'm thinking it's this house, because they say this house was built on top of the barn's foundation of the previous foundation, which was the barn at the time of the battle. So the story goes that after the first day's hard fighting, they wanted to move these bodies off the field quickly, the dead, and put them somewhere out of the sight of Robert E. Lee, because they didn't want the general seeing all these dead Confederate soldiers lying on the ground. So they moved them into the barn, which is where this house is now, onto the dirt cellar floor to stay cool out of the sun till they could do proper burials. Now what they say has happened, this was like in the 1970s, a couple that owned this farmhouse or bought this farmhouse was upstairs in bed, and about 2 o'clock in the morning they heard this like tremendous banging, crashing coming from within their house. So being a stern Pennsylvania Dutch gentleman, this guy grabbed his shotgun and started walking through the house. Well, the sound was coming from the basement. So when he entered the basement, there's a cellar door that went into like a cold room with a dirt floor where they'd store food and stuff and canned items. Well, as a matter of fact, this is the same place that these bodies were stored during the battle, on the same dirt floor. Well, the story goes the bodies were moved, and when they moved the bodies in there on that day of the battle, that one of them wasn't dead. He was actually wounded, but he was so weak that they couldn't tell that he was still alive. So when they moved the bodies into there, they laid him in there but piled the dead bodies on top of him. So he was so weak that he couldn't move. He laid there and screamed for 3 whole days trying to get help. Could you imagine laying there in the heat of the July summer in 1863 during the hot battle day, and your body is laying here under all these dead bodies, which are decomposing, and the juices are dropping down on you from these bodies. The torture that this man must have went through for 3 days. Now, at the end of the battle, the Union soldiers discovered these bodies laying in there, and as they were moving them for proper burial, they noticed that the guy was moaning. He was still alive. So he was moved to a nearby field hospital where he expired the same day. So the story goes, when the people that owned this house in the 1970s, this door was just banging, banging, banging with no explanation. Well, it happens so often that he actually called a priest into the house. A priest had to do an exorcism, and to this day in the basement of that house, on that door, is a circle with a cross in it where the priest made an exorcism symbol where he performed the exorcism. Well, all he had to do was exorcise the spirit of this young man who died in such a terrible way, who was haunting that house because it was built over that foundation of where the bodies was. And I believe it's this farm. I can't say for sure, but that's the only farm I can think of as you turn here onto Little Round Top, or where that farm could be. So follow me on this adventure as we continue on, and I'll give you more ghost stories of Gettysburg. So follow me. So I have 2 short stories here, ghost stories for you that I think you'll enjoy. And before I tell you them, if you're watching this, please subscribe to my channel and give it a thumbs up. I'm always looking for new subscribers. It's absolutely free. It don't cost you a thing. And I appreciate the people that support. So if you do watch this, please subscribe to my channel. Just hit the subscribe button, the like button. Feel free to leave comments and suggestions of other things you'd like to see in the future. And I really appreciate it. So this is the first story of this area, and we're standing in the peach orchard, which is known as the peach orchard, where Sickles' Union Army moved up to and left the gap in the fishhook line and almost destroyed the Union line on the second day's battle. But this story was a personal story here that I heard from a person on my history tour when I worked at the Farnsworth. Had told me this story because people brought up ghosts, and so she brought up this story. She was a local lady who lived in Gettysburg, who moved away, but she grew up here and went to high school here. She said her and her high school class was out here at the peach orchard where I'm standing, and it was a summer day, nice day, not too hot, not too cold, about like it is today, like in the 70s, in broad daylight. And they're standing here with their teacher and a personal battlefield tour guide who is telling the story of what happened here. As they're standing here telling the story, everyone that was in the party, even the park ranger and the teacher and all the students they seen Army troops, Union soldiers that you could see through, running through here in the peach orchard in their own little world, not paying attention to what they were doing, but they seen them for like a whole 15 seconds running through this field here as if they were fighting in battle. Now, she said that it shocked them, and they all seen it, and they all believed what they saw. So this is one story I personally heard from the mouth of the person who witnessed. Now, across here is another field, which is part of Pickett's charge. This is where the Alabamians crossed and stuff. Now this story comes from the TV show Ghost Labs on TV. You might have seen this story. The story goes that the main guy of the Ghost Labs was here with his family. He's probably 15 or 16 years old at the time. They were vacationing, and as they were leaving town, they came out the Emmitsburg Pike here and looked over into this field. Well, what they saw was Union troops marching across the field with flags, an American flag and a company flag waving through the air. So he goes, "This is cool. There's some reenactors here. I want to get out and film this." So they stopped real quick, and he actually got this on film, and you can find this on YouTube if you search Ghost Lab, Gettysburg Ghost or whatever. But he actually got him on film marching across here. Now when he did, he panned on across the field to see if there were more reenactors, and when he came back to that same spot right here, they were completely gone. They were no longer there. And the thing is, where did they go? They're in the middle of this field. There's nowhere they could go that quick within 7 seconds. You got the wood line in the back, you got the field there, the open field that comes over here to the peach orchard. So there was really nowhere for them to go. But if you want to check out that video, just check out a Ghost Lab or look up Ghost Lab on YouTube and Gettysburg, and you will probably see the video. It's really neat. It's unexplainable. They were there. He panned across for about 7 seconds, come back, and they were completely gone. So that's another story that happened in this area. So follow me on this adventure as we continue on, and I'll tell you more ghost stories of Gettysburg. Here we are at our next stop, and we're standing in front of Sachs Bridge. This is one of the most haunted locations here in Gettysburg, believed. It's also known as the Hanging Bridge. The second day of July 1863, it's said that 3 Confederate soldiers were hung here for desertion, which was hung from one of these beams right here. And some people say when you go down through here, they've looked back and seen those 3 apparitions hanging here on the bridge. That's one story that's been told and is well known. I've had my own experiences out here, and I'll share those with you. But I'm going to tell you one more story before I tell you my own experiences. So let me give you a little history of this bridge first before I go into some more ghost stories. This bridge was used by both troops, Union and Confederate. They both crossed this. Lee's troops and the Union troops used this bridge coming into the Battle of Gettysburg, and Lee's troops used it on their 5-mile-long wagon trains of wounded and stuff. When they retreated here in Gettysburg, they crossed this same bridge. So there's many stories of spiritual activities that's happened here at this bridge, and I'm going to share a few of those. First one I'm going to share, it comes from Mark Nesbitt's book, Ghost of Gettysburg in the Movies, and it happened right in this general location right here where I'm standing, right in this area right here by the water. There's a couple here visiting from out of state, trying to learn the history of the place and checking out Sachs Bridge. And there's another guy walking around taking photographs. So the couple was standing here, and the photographer was talking to him, and out of nowhere, out of these woods, come walking a Confederate soldier. He come up there and stood by him, but he didn't say anything. He just stared into space across this way. So the photographer is pointing at his accoutrements on his body, saying what they were used for, like the canteen and the cartridge box, a cap box, etc. And the couple asked the photographer if they could take a picture with the gentleman. They just thought it was a reenactor, you know, he come walking out of these woods. So they did. The young lady put her arm up around the Confederate soldier's shoulder, and her husband put his arm around the waist of the Confederate soldier, and the guy snapped the picture. And then the Confederate soldier, just turned and walked back without saying a word. Well, the couple took their camera home that the photographer used to take their picture. It was their own personal camera. And when they had the film developed, sure enough, they're standing there and they got their arms out, but there's nothing in between them. There's no Confederate soldier standing there. So they're just standing there with their arms around this ghostly body that's not there. So that's one story that comes from Mark Nesbitt's Ghost Stories of Gettysburg. So I'll continue on with my own personal stories. So one of my next stories I'm going to share with you is I've got a friend named Jack, and he was in the video with me when we did the ghost tour of the Farnsworth house. And if you watch my videos, you can find that video. And he was my ghost hunting buddy, and we used to do a lot of ghost hunting together and testing all these theories ourselves. Well, we was out here one night, and we were by ourselves. There's nobody else out here on the bridge. He was clear down on this end of the bridge, and I was clear on the opposite end of the bridge. I was down on this end of the bridge, and I was doing some EVPs with a voice recorder. And as I was standing there, you know, I wanted to test my theories the first time I've ever used one. So I wanted to see if this stuff was real. Well, I found out it is real. I was standing there, and honestly, I can say I was asking questions, and I was leaving pauses in between the questions, hoping I would get an answer. First question I asked was, is there any Confederate soldiers here with me tonight? And then I paused, of course. The next question is, what unit was you with? Paused. Shut off my recorder, rewinded it to see if I'd caught anything. Sure enough, I caught a voice. And it was not just a certain voice, but it was a southern drawl voice, and it was a Class A EVP. Now, if you don't know what a Class A EVP is, it is a EVP that is so distinguished and so understandable that you can actually hear them pretty loud and hear exactly what they're saying. Now, they say that spirits speak on a different frequency, and that's why we can't hear it while we're asking the question, but the recorder will pick up the spirit's voice. So when I rewinded it, of course I listened to it, and it was right here in this spot, and the question was, is there any Confederate soldiers here with me tonight? The response was, sure is, just like that. Next question, what unit was you with? 114 Virginia. Well, I researched because I found that interesting. I was so freaked out. I was like, wow. I had to go run to my buddy and let him hear it, and he was like so amazed. He had tears in his eyes. We both did. It was so shocking that I'd actually caught voices. And I researched, and there was no 114th Virginia in the Battle of Gettysburg, but there was the 14th Virginia 1st Brigade. So how ironic is that? But that's a story that I will share of my own personal experiences. Another story, I was out here and there were other people ghost hunting, and I was with my buddy again. We were standing in the middle of the bridge here, and he had this app on his phone. I'd never seen it before, and it was called a voice box, and it would pick up energy and just say words. So I'm standing there, I go, wow, that's neat. He goes, you want to try it? I go, sure. So I asked a stupid question. It really was a stupid question. I said, have you crossed this bridge before? Well, once the app responded, said stupid. And then shortly after, 4 seconds later, it said James. And that's my name. My true name is James, but I go as Uncle Jimmy on here because my friends call me Jimmy. So I go, oh, wow. And Jack did too. And the guy goes, is your name James? I go, it sure is. And they all started laughing. We thought it was hilarious because I'd asked the ghost a stupid question. I got a stupid answer. He called me stupid for asking a dumb question. And the last story I'd like to tell you here is, as you come out here and park at the bridge, there's a path that goes back in the woods alongside the creek to the spillway down there, and you can see it off in the distance. Me and my buddy used to go down that trail and do investigations. Well, one night we're walking down through there, and as we're walking and talking about spirits and stuff, all of a sudden we both seen it at the same time, and we both jumped back. It scared us so bad. In the darkness, you could see a foot come forward like this right in front of us. And it was a blue pants and a black brogan, just like the Civil War. It was a Union soldier's leg, and it came right toward us. We both seen it. We both jumped at the same time. I asked him what he saw to make sure I seen what he seen. And he seen the exact same thing. But there was nothing there, but we had seen this leg come toward us. So that's another story, and I will share some pictures once I get back to the vehicle of actual pictures of I took out here at Sachs Bridge and show them to you. So follow me on this adventure. So I decided to come back into the bridge and show you the photographs because the sun is blaring down and glaring too much on my camera. So I'll show you what I did capture before in some photographs. This is one of the pictures I captured, and This is in the middle of the bridge when I was out here with my buddy Jack. It almost looks like something's forming. It's called ectoplasma, and I didn't see this with my own eyes, but when I took the picture, that's what I got. Let's see if I can show you another. I got this perfect red orb right here on the bridge. I hope you can see that. I'm doing the best I can here to show you, but that's on the bridge there. And perfect red orb. And I got some more here. Here's another example that ectoplasma, as it's called. Spirits forming. It looks like there's faces if you look real close. Let's see if there's more here. There's one forming on the rafters. So them are just a few of the pictures I have captured here at Sachs Bridge. I hope you're enjoying these stories as I tell you these ghost stories of Gettysburg. If you're ever here, you ought to experience it yourself and investigate it yourself, because stuff is real. I tell you, it's real. So follow me on this adventure. Here's another quick ghost story you'll find interesting. This is the Kadori house, and it sits right in the middle of Pickett's Charge, where Pickett's Charge happened. I mean, soldiers marched right by this house to get over here to the angle, and Pickett's Charge happened from this direction across in this field. The story goes, this was years after the Battle of Gettysburg. The people that lived here, this was like a story from like 1889, late 1800s. And the family at the time that lived here, I guess was still the Kadori family. It was passed down through the generations. And the story goes, they were sitting out, I guess there used to be like a front porch, or maybe even it was the rear porch, I'm not sure, but they were sitting out late one evening and just talking and relaxing, talking about their day, when a fog started rolling in. Now they claim in this fog they seen soldiers, Confederate soldiers, crawling on their hands and knees toward them from across the road here. Now, I'm not sure in the late 1800s if this was still a dirt road. It's now paved, but I'm sure it was. But they were coming from across Pickett's Charge here, the field. And in that fog, there was soldiers, armless, legless, crawling in pain and agony in this fog. And they could see them as solid figures crawling toward them, toward the house. Well, it scared the folks so bad that they went inside and locked their door. Now, this is a story that I find interesting that comes from the actual Kadori family that lived in this house. And this was 20, 30 years after. Now, remember, there were a lot of bodies. And if you look at the map, there is a map you can look of where buried bodies were. A lot of bodies were buried right along this fence line here, Confederate bodies, until they came back in 1879 and moved most of the bodies to Richmond, Virginia, which they are now located in Hollywood Cemetery. But there's still a lot of bodies here that I know, just like up the road here at the Bryant farm. On this side of the barn, there is a couple Confederate bodies still buried there today that they know is still buried there, because they actually discovered them when they were digging for their garden, and they reported the bodies, but they decided to bury them back to where they found them, and I'll show you that as we drive along here. Now, the Bryant farm's right up here, right close to the angle. It was owned by a black citizen who left when the battle was happening and never did return to his home, because if you was a black freed man and the Confederates capture you, they'd put you right back into slavery. So he was so scared he never returned to his home. But that is the farm right here. And I'll get out or pull over here so you can see it. But right there on this side of that white barn, against that wall, there are 2 or 3 Confederate soldiers buried, that they say. And this comes down from the gentleman in town that owns the Free Civil War Museum. His family used to own that, and I believe it was his grandfather that discovered the bodies. So that's a known fact that they're still buried there. And there could be bodies buried anywhere across these fields. Who knows how many, but most of them probably being Confederate soldiers. So I'm going to take you to a couple more spots before I end this vlog, and I hope you're enjoying these stories of ghost stories of Gettysburg. So follow me on this adventure. So we're standing out here near the first day's battle, and this is known as the railroad cut. It's a cut that at the time there was no railroad. It was being built for the railroad, and many ghost stories happen here where they see apparitions of soldiers walking up and down through here or laying on the tracks. And the reason that is that a lot of fierce fighting happened right here in this spot. The New York regiment, the Irish brigade, came right through here, marching this from this direction to this railroad cut. The Confederates were down inside this railroad cut, so all the Union soldiers had to do was aim down and start shooting. And then the soldiers actually got down in here and started fighting among the Confederate soldiers. Fierce fighting with hand-to-hand combat with butts of rifles busting heads open, and just fierce fighting and killing. So this is another spot that they see a lot of weird things, and I'll show you the other side. I'll cross over here. So they were on both sides of this cut fighting, right down in this direction too. But another reason I stopped here is to tell you that the last known body found here was in this railroad cut, and it was like in the early 1980s. I believe it was 1980 or 1981, and it had the soil had came loose, and the skull of the skeleton of they believed to be a Confederate soldier fell out the side of the hill from erosion. And I'll show you where that happened. They got a stone over here that marks the exact spot where that body was found. And if you can see that little tiny stone there right along the embankment there at the edge of that tree, past this pine tree, straight forward on the very edge of the soil there, and that's where the body was found. They put a little marker there. I guess they moved that body elsewhere, maybe to Richmond, since they believed it was a Confederate soldier, since they did die in this cut. And here's another view. If you look right along the edge of the railroad cut, you will see the little stone standing right in front of that little tree straight forward, and that's where they found the body, and they put a marker there. So that's some stories that happen along here, and they say they see apparitions of soldiers all the time in this cut. And I'm going to take you to my last stop of ghost stories to this segment, and the place is called Iverson's Pits, and I'll tell you what happened there. So follow me on this adventure. Windy out here, but this is our last stop, and we're standing out close to the Peace Memorial. Peace Memorial is right off there in the distance, and the Union line was right up here, right along these monuments, and there's a stone wall that runs there. The story goes the Union Army was laying behind the stone walls there. Now there's a Confederate unit known as Iverson's Brigade, and they were coming from this direction toward them, and they waited till they got right about in this general area right here where this cornfield is. And as they got within range, the Union Army stood up, fired into Iverson's brigade, which was marching in perfect parade order across this field, and shot a volley of bullets toward them, and they fell in dress parade right in a line in this field right here, along this field. And it became known as Iverson's pits because they actually buried them in dress parade right here in this field, about 400 men in a row. And for years, farmers would not farm this land or even come out. When they did farm it, they refused to come out at night because they said it was haunted, and they would see like blue lights glowing above the graves, and just weird things would happen. So they definitely wouldn't farm this field at night. Also, it's said that just weird, strange things would happen out here. They would hear things, see things. Now, these bodies were removed in 1879, as most of the Confederate dead was, and taken down, like I said, to Richmond, to Hollywood Cemetery. But I wanted to show you this spot. And they said for years the grass was always greener there when it grew in the summer from the bodies laying that ran across the field. The grass was always higher and greener. So that's another story that's passed down through generations. And I'll show you this marker here. It says, on this afternoon of July 1st, 1863, the regiment charged to this point, capturing 2 battle flags and a number of prisoners from those brigades, of them Confederate brigades. And these were Pennsylvania units, and this was erected by the survivors in 1883. So after they fired that volley and killed that whole line of Iverson's brigade, the last of the Confederates that were alive, they charged out here and captured them at this point. So Iverson's pits laid somewhere right here in this low valley. I'm not sure the exact location it is now. It's hard to tell, but I'd say if you did find it and you dug in that area, you'd probably still find like buttons and stuff from where they buried them. I'm sure they didn't remove everything when they dug up the bodies. But yeah, so it's known as Iverson's pits and Iverson's brigade. So I hope you've enjoyed these stories today. I decided to do a second part because everyone enjoyed the first part so much. Again, I'm Uncle Jimmy with Jimmy's Train Station and Travel Adventures. And if you're watching this, please subscribe to my channel. I always ask this, and I am growing, and I appreciate the people who subscribing and watching my videos. It's absolutely free. I enjoy putting out videos like this for you. Feel free to give it a thumbs up. Feel free to leave comments, suggestions of other things you'd like to see in the future. Till then, go out and have your own adventures and enjoy life like I am today in this nice 70-degree weather day here in Gettysburg. So until next time, this has been Uncle Jimmy with Jimmy's Train Station and Travel Adventures. Till next time, goodbye.